Hi there, I'm Wendy McCallum, burnout and alcohol coach and wellness expert, and you're listening to Bite Size Balance, where everyday extraordinary women share their stories, expertise, and wisdom, all in the name of lifting each other up and creating a better life by design. Whether it's wellness, career, relationships, food, alcohol, mindfulness, hormones, or parenting, we talk about all things women's balance. If your life looks great on paper, but it still feels like something's missing, you're in the right place. Welcome to Bite Size Balance.
Hi everyone, I am back with my favorite guest, Dr. Sarah Baillie, naturopath. We are talking about a topic that Sarah has been wanting to talk about for a while, and she raised this at the very first time I think that we talked about the types of conversations that we would love to have together on this podcast way back in the very beginning, but we just haven't had a podcast episode yet focused on this, and we want to really focus in on this topic today of the connection between creativity and menopause. And really what we're doing today, I think, is focusing in on the upside of menopause today, like the part of menopause that Sarah and I really, really want to celebrate. So hi, Sarah. How are you today?
Hi, glad to be back.
Happy to have you as
good.
I would also like to let everyone know that I am now officially in post-menopause. So we had our Menoversary episode. If you listen to that, Sarah, it was actually the day of Sarah's Menoversary, and I was like 2 weeks out. Well, I've now passed those 2 weeks without getting a period, so I am officially done. I did learn, though, in a seminar that I attended last week that menopause is really just one day. And everything before that is perimenopause, and everything after that is post-menopause. And I don't think we've ever talked about this on that podcast. Do you agree with that, Sarah?
I guess that's true, really. It's like when the menses pause, really is what menopause is, and when it's fully done. And so now we're all post-menopausal.
Yeah, we're all post-menopausal. The person who was hosting that webinar or whatever it was that I was on was the reason she was emphasizing that is because she was talking about how unfortunate it is that we get thrown into this category of like menopausal women, and there are all these kind of stereotypes that go along with that, when the reality is it's just a day, you know, and we're just women and we just keep going. And I just keep
going. Yeah,
I loved that. So I am menopausal. I am not menopausal. I am now officially postmenopausal. So you can sing me the song anytime you want, Sarah.
No, I'm good. Thank you. You don't want to hear that.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to launch into this topic, and I'm kind of going to let Sarah lead it because I think she has more to say. I think she has more to say on this than I do, but time will tell, I guess. Maybe I have more to say about this than I think I do. So why don't you introduce the topic, Sarah, and tell us what it is you wanted to focus in on today.
Well, I wanted to cover this topic because it's something that we don't ever really see written or talked about. You know, we think of menopause as symptoms and hormones and brain fog and, you know, all of the things that that we associate with menopause and perimenopause as, you know, it's troublesome, right? And then we might see women like us talking about the positive sides and the wisdom that comes with it, and you know the what's on the other side of perimenopause. So when the hormones calm down, we see lots written about that, but nobody really talking about this idea of creativity and how interesting for me it's very interesting because it's linked to menopause. And I'll just explain kind of my theory, and it kind of started when I realized that. I think I realized it in hindsight, actually. I was fairly early in practice, and my mom she'd been through a hysterectomy, but so we didn't really know when she went through official menopause. But all of a sudden, she started painting plant pots. You know, sort of taking a little plant pot and decorating it, and this was completely out of character. So we thought, well, what's going on? And eventually, because I was also seeing an influx in my practice of a whole bunch of menopausal and perimenopausal women at the time, I started making the link to these two things, that she was going through some sort of hormonal transition, and she was moving her creative energy away from externally looking after all of us and looking after all the organizations that she was in, in charge of, and sort of focusing all of her creative energy externally, as we've talked about before on other podcasts. And she was turning that creativity inwards, and it was coming out as painted plant pots. And she sold them at the local store for a while. I mean, it was really quite an endeavor, and we called them Meno Pots actually in the end. We still have the original one. I mean, the original one is quite funny. It has a demented looking sheep on it, like it's just very, but and then she moved on to pick up the cello. So she took the cello, and then I think she took the guitar, if I'm not, anyways, she went on to do all of the things musically that she had forced us to do as children. So she had sort of suppressed, when she had us, she suppressed this urge of hers to be artistic and to play music, and kind of channeled it all into us. And we all played stringed instruments. Only one of us stuck with it, of course, but she was suddenly like, I'm going to play the cello, and now she knits. So she's just kind of taken on this. I don't know if she'd be okay with me talking about this, but I'm doing it anyways. She's
Mom, we're doing this to
Mom.
For women. Totally.
No, I'm sure it would be fine. So so this creativity started bubbling up in her, and I started to really evaluate, or just even talk to my patients about creativity and where it fit in their lives. And this was at least a decade ago, if not 15 years. And over the course of that time, I've really been aware of the fact that creativity not only starts to shift in women from premenopause, perimenopause to menopause, but it's also very beneficial to tap into it in terms of managing the roller coaster, for example, of perimenopause. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, which was just that that this is an integral part of working with your own transitions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's fascinating. And again, I'm really curious to hear more about like the science behind it, the biology behind it, all of that stuff, because I always find that really fascinating. And I don't have any knowledge on that, but I can say that the experience that I've had clinically as well is really mirrors the data that you've gathered over the course of the last 15 years or so. The women that I work with are, for the most part, in their perimenopausal or postmenopausal years. And I don't think I have yet to see anyone on their actual menopausal day. They're one day of the year where they're menopausal, but they're all perimenopausal or postmenopausal. And I see the same thing. I see, lots of women. I mean, obviously we've talked about this lots on other episodes, but women who are feeling burnt out, feeling a little bit lost. They feel like they've given everything they have to everybody else for the last however many years. And now they're at a place, a lot of them, where their kids don't need them as much anymore, or they've gotten as high as they think they're probably going to get in their career. And so there's not really anywhere else to go there. And they feel a little lost. They feel a little adrift. And they know that there's something different or something else out there that they could or should be doing, but they don't know what it is yet. So I spend a lot of time, I do a lot of values work as a coach. And so that can be really helpful, trying to articulate your own personal values. That can be helpful in figuring out what's missing. But I also say to women, and I think I've said this on another episode, go back to the time before you had kids and ask yourself what the things were that you did then that brought you joy and lit you up, and start experimenting with some of those things and see what happens, which sounds like that's probably what happened with your mom. See what happens if you start experimenting with those things. Do any of those things resonate and feel good to you now? But what I see too is these women who come through burnout or come through the childbearing years and into their late 40s, early 50s, and they just do these incredible things. I mean, there are incredible things happening right now with women in our age group who are creating these amazingly successful businesses, coming up with these new ideas, just creating things that are amazing. Anyway, I see that all the time. And I'll say it again for the 400th time. This podcast, I don't think would have happened if I hadn't been, exactly where I was hormonally, which was basically in the last 12 months before that menopause date. I think my hormones had a lot to do with the fact that I just, first of all, really wanted to do this. And second of all, that I had the confidence and courage to do it. Whereas a few years ago, I would have been too concerned about what other people thought about this podcast. I would have been too concerned about not doing a good enough job with it not being, quote unquote, perfect. And I would have just held off on that. And I think for me, the two pieces that have contributed to a increased creativity and also business drive as an entrepreneur are that confidence that comes with the calmness that we were talking about in the Menoversary episode, that calmness that happens when your hormones stop fluctuating and they kind of start to level out. So it's that, I think there's a confidence that comes with that calmness, that kind of like, I don't care anymore what other people think thing.
Yeah.
And then also this increased creative spirit, just the need to create something new, which of course has ended up in this podcast. And now you and I are about to create this, I'm gonna call it before it's even out there, really incredible program you and I are gonna create. It's gonna be so good. We're so excited about it. And I think that program as well is probably brought to everybody by menopause. That's my guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm also writing a book right now, working on writing a book. And I've tried to do that at least 10 times in the last decade. And I could only really fully commit to it on the other side.
Yeah.
Right as things were starting to level out hormonally. It's so interesting to me. We've talked about this kind of, if you know anything about the chakra system and energy centers in the body, that second chakra is around the sort of uterus and the ovaries. And that's where the creative energy sort of comes from if you're talking about those energy centers. And I think that creative energy is spent mostly on outward projects for a long time in a woman's life. And then it's like as soon as the hormones start changing, it turns inward. And then you can be filled with this, you're not depleting yourself. It's like energy coming back to you. It's like being filled with potential energy. And I think it's really, it's about three things for me. One is it's about self-creation versus procreation, right? So if we think about
let's talk about that.
If we think about this kind of the female organs, the uterus and the ovaries being designed to procreate, let's call it that. That's about procreating externally, like creating something that needs to be looked after, really,
right.
that is separate from self, right? Mm-hmm. And then this movement of energy internally is really about contributing to creating the next phase of your life, creating the next chapter for yourself, and that actually requires a lot of imagination. Right. It takes a lot of creative energy to imagine what the next 30 years are going to look like, or whatever it is. And
don't you think, especially for women, I mean, we're generalizing here, but I think especially for women, because so many of us have spent 20 years or whatever caring for other people, other things, whether we have kids or not, focusing in on our career.
Absolutely.
Taking care of just other people and things in our life as opposed to taking care of ourselves. So I think for us, I mean, men very often, like when I look at my husband, and I think I said this in another episode, he's been building his company for the last 20 years. His creativity has been pouring outwards. I mean inwards, I guess, but he's been creating his own special thing that's his. I haven't been doing that.
Yeah. And now's your time.
Right.
And so if the space is there, then like when the hormones stop doing the roller coaster thing, it creates space, right? You don't feel driven by this other thing anymore. And so it's an opening, it's a possibility. It's so interesting for me when I talk to women about creativity, because I just ask the question, like, what do you do that's creative for yourself? And most women in their perimenopause years just look at me blankly, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, and because the energy has not been there to be doing that stuff. And so I'm usually suggesting, especially in perimenopause, that they try and pull themselves out of that roller coaster for a bit and find, even if it's 10 minutes of creative time, find that, because it will be stabilizing, it will be grounding, it will help with the roller coaster if you could start fueling that energy that's coming back to you and creating space for it. And it's amazing the responses that I get, because they're often, sometimes I get tears, sometimes I get like light bulb moments, like, oh, and other times it's, you know, they've already started, but they didn't know why they were doing it, right? They've already felt that pull towards, you know, I mean, it's in these times right now, it's hard to take on violin lessons or to, do big art projects or whatever, but it's, I just think that it's a fundamental part of our bodies as being creative beings. We can create life, whether you choose to or not, doesn't matter. Our bodies can actually create that. And so that energy, when that energy is not depleted, when it's gone, when it's, when the shift has happened, that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It goes somewhere. Right. Like, and so that energy, I think, comes out in different ways for different women, but it's all sort of creative. And I think that if you're aware of it and that you foster it and you nurture it and you really look for spaces in your life where it can show up, that I think that your menopause can be so much better.
You know what I'm thinking of as you're talking, because I'm like the ever practical burnout coach here. I'm thinking, this is a really great example of women are really bad at doing anything that doesn't have like an extrinsic measurable value to it. So where there's not something like being produced that we can place a value on. And I think I spent for sure my 30s and 40s just, thinking it was a total waste of time to do anything that didn't produce a result. So that's why for so many women, and this contributes to burnout, right? Because we just can't sit still. It feels like that's a waste of time and we should be up doing laundry or, doing some more work or whatever. And I've talked about this, I think, in our burnout episodes, this one of my favorite quotes from Bertrand Russell, who says, time that you enjoy wasting is not wasted time. Mm-hmm. And I use that quote to try to convince women that downtime is actually really valuable. So try to help them see the value. And I connect it, scientifically to cortisol and needing time you need to close the stress cycle, bring your cortisol down. This is actually going to help when it comes to longevity and to how you feel every day and all of these other things. But I have to convince them that it's okay to not do anything. But I think what you're doing right now is really, you're attaching a value to creativity in midlife for women, which I think is fantastic, because if you're listening to this podcast, what Sarah's saying is this actually does have a significant value. It is not just wasted time. It is time you enjoy wasting, in that there may not be you might not produce the Mona Lisa from this or actually ever learn to play an entire song on the guitar, but the actual time that you invest in yourself and in doing the activity, whatever that is, has great value and might actually make this transition far more pleasant for you. Is that right, Claire?
I think there's no question that it will make the transition more pleasant. I think that we often have to get over the hump of that productivity piece and the guilt and the selfishness and, all those feelings that come up that are driven from our belief systems that we've learned over time. But when you can wrestle with that and you can actually also understand that creativity is not just arts, right? So we tend to think of creativity as, well, I can't draw, well, I can't sing, well, I can't paint, I can't, I don't play an instrument. I'm not crafty. I hear lots of that, but for me, creativity is anything that helps you lose time.
Yeah.
Right. So if you lose time, if you are amazed that an hour has gone by, then you are in a creative space. right? So if you're cooking, or if you're staring out the window, or if you're, I don't know, so reading, for me, my biggest source of creativity and like nurturing for myself comes from reading novels. And I struggled for a while to figure out how that was creative. And then I realized that my imagination is being completely engaged,
Sure.
right? So I'm in another place, and that's using my creativity. And so I think that it's really, really important to look at that. Just back to the wasting time piece and the loss of time. Every time you get into that stage or that state, you are replenishing depleted resources, right? So it's not just that. I feel like some people think that rest is neutral, right? That
Exactly.
that it's not actually building anything. It's just collapse. It's just neutral, and that rest is therefore not valued, as you say.
Exactly.
Right?
It's like it's a pause, but there's no. It's a pause, but there's nothing actually being generated or created from it. But
yeah,
the truth is, that's a great way to think about it. That you're just replenishing your reserves, and you can do that by actually having a nap, but you can also do that by doing a puzzle or reading a book or recording a podcast, to be perfectly honest, because I get super juiced when I do these podcasts. Like I just feel, I feel the energy. It's very, it feels always very positive to me. Especially when I do them with people I love, like you. I get off the end of the call and I feel great about the conversation that we've had, because we're using our creative energy in the process of coming up with topics and the conversations that we're having. And, sometimes my imagination gets going as well with all of this. So I love that. I think my more kind of practical approach to burnout and this idea of time you enjoy wasting just gels so nicely with what you're talking about in terms of lost time actually being the goal. The goal is to lose the time, because if you lose the time, then you have replenished the resource. That you've actually given yourself something that you need. So that's fantastic.
Well, so the third point, so there's what I said, it serves three purposes,
right?
And it may serve more. These are just the three that I've observed, really, is that, so self-creation, so creating that space to imagine what things could look like and move in that direction. Losing time, so working with what's the word, just like replenishing that depleted energy. And then in replenishing that depleted energy, you are also serving your nervous system, right? So on the biological front, like you were saying around cortisol, it's like when you get into those states, then you are no longer in fight or flight. Right. And so your body believes in those moments that you are going to live a long time, that you're not under the stress of we could die in the next 30 seconds, which is, to be quite honest, what a lot of us spend our time in biologically, is that chronic state of being on. And so when you turn off and you go into a creative zone, what you're actually doing is you're reassuring the body. It's like a lovely nurturing hug for the body, saying, okay, you're going to live a long time. We're going to look after all of your long-term survival functions here. So we're going to repair any damage that's been done. We're going to support your hormone balance. We're going to, look after the way your brain functions. We're going to do all of these things so that you can live a long time. And, if that isn't a purpose, I don't know what is.
Yeah, it's so good. So I've said this, another way of thinking about this is, you're really looking if you're sitting, you're like at a loss right now, like what could I do to lose time? So if you're that person, I hear that all the time from women. They don't even know how to start slowing down. They don't know what they do. So if you're thinking that, I would say this, remember that what you're looking for when it comes to an activity that's actually going to help you fill your bucket or, refill your gas tank or replenish your resources, however you want to look at it, is anything that signals to your brain that you are safe and no longer being chased by the saber-toothed tiger. So if the activity is something that is incompatible with being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, it's probably pulling you out of fight and back into that relaxation response. So you can't, you are not going to sit down on a log and pull out your needlepoint kit and needlepoint if you're still being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. You're not going to pull out a novel and read it. You're not going to, Google, how do I learn how to play the cello? I mean, anything like that is, if you think about it, just ask yourself that question. Like, am I signaling to myself that I'm safe? Those are the types of activities. And there's a million different things that can do that. And it's very individual for people too. What actually, things that relax some people do not relax me. Learning to play the cello probably would not be relaxing for me. It would probably push me into fight or flight because I had to play that thing when I was a kid for like 4 years. I was like,
Yeah.
Although I'm not sure my mother was living out her own creative dreams through me, but so you have to do something that actually feels good to you. And I think I've said this before, it's probably a bit like dating. You probably have to go out there and try a bunch of things. You might not get it right away. It might be, It might take a little effort for you to remember or find the thing that makes you feel good, but that's okay. That's part of the process. And the great news is you have time now because your kids don't need you anymore.
Yeah, in theory.
They don't want to be with you anyway.
That's true. Yeah.
My teenagers do not want to be with me. So I got lots of time to pursue creative things. And it also might be business. I do want to come back to that. Like, I think that this plays out a lot in the business world where I spend a lot of time. Most of my clients are in the business world somehow. They're either at high levels in corporations or firms, or they are successfully running companies. And I see this creative piece come for women as well in their 40s in the business world, where they decide, oh, I'm going to take this in a completely different direction, or this is something that I've always wanted to do, but I've just never had the time or the guts to do it. I'm going to do it now. And they take on a challenge. Or, in the world that I'm in, I mean, this is something that's happened for me. They get the confidence to narrow their niche. To just say like this, I actually don't want to be doing a lot of these things. Like, I don't want to be doing weight loss for the sake of weight loss. And a few years ago, I started to get enough courage up to actually say that out loud and narrow my niche and stop doing programs that had anything to do or could be in any way connected with weight loss. Healthy weight loss, obviously, but just weight loss. I just didn't want to do it anymore. And as I have progressed through perimenopause and menopause, I've gotten even more narrow in that niche. I know exactly who the women are that I want to work with now. And I think that is probably connected to this whole creativity piece as well. So it might be work creativity or business creativity. It doesn't necessarily, like Sarah says, it doesn't need to be something that we typically associate with artistic.
Right. And it's all part and parcel of that, figuring out what's not working for you anymore. Right. So it's just like, this is very much a transition period, and it's an opportunity. And in order for us to look at our lives and evaluate what's not working for us anymore, we have to have a certain amount of creativity, right? Yeah. Because you have to imagine what it looks like without that thing that you don't like anymore. What does your life look like without treating or, having weight loss clients? What does, I had
better. I love you guys. I love all of you, whoever works with me on weight loss, but it just was not a resonant area of practice for me. And my life feels so much better in the niche I'm in. It really does. I love what I do. And I can totally see, as you're talking, the connection between me narrowing my niche over the years and me just generally getting more grounded and happier and more content in the life that I have. And also, interestingly, if we were going to kind of step outside of this and look at how that impacts other parts of your life. Is it a coincidence that 3.5 years ago, I finally got the courage to say, I don't think wine is my friend anymore? I don't know. I don't think that's a coincidence. I also think that was probably tied with, my life and what was happening and me kind of coming. I've said this, I think before, but I almost feel like I was just like coming down, over the last like 3 or 4, just coming down to like, okay, who do I actually want to be? Who am I, and who do I want to be?
We have to be very creative to answer that question.
Exactly.
Like you have to engage that creativity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So what do we do about it? So that's ultimately the question, right? We look for it. We be aware. You don't have to go out and sign up for 10 different programs to figure out, who you're going to date in the creative world, whether you're going to learn to paint or woodwork or whatever it is. just being aware of that instinct is a good place to start. Like that, the feelings that you might want to sing in the car, or that you are starting to have some ideas about something that you've thought about, 15 years ago in terms of your business, and that those start to bubble up again, right? Those thoughts start to bubble up because 15 years ago, there was no way in hell you were able to do it because you had too much going on. And now that space is there to work with it. And so I think I wouldn't get rid of the word creativity, but I would just qualify it as it could mean a ton of different things. And for me, it's like forward motion, really, creativity. And so, and if you do have something that you have been historically passionate about, or that you really enjoy doing, or if you like to doodle or cooking or whatever it is, then making space to try that again, especially in the perimenopause years where, life is a bit more chaotic, and that could be really grounding, is to start to create that space, and it can really propel you forward in terms of opening up the potential of menopause.
And I also say this, I feel like I need to explicitly give women permission with what you're talking about, to not do it really well, and to not necessarily complete it the way that we might objectively think of a complete it. Because I know one of the things when I think back, that's kind of, I've gone through lots of, it's interesting actually, but a few years ago, I was really not happy. So I just wasn't feeling like I was where I wanted to be. And I was kind of, I was feeling bored more often than I was used to feeling bored. Like I had kind of this restless thing going on. And I also struggle with seasonal affective in the winter time. It's hard when it's really dark, and the days are long. And my husband said to me, I think you need something else to do. And he started sending me, which could have been annoying, but I love him. He started sending me, he would find things and he'd send them to me. So he sent me something about tutoring when I was, and this is something I used to do when I was in university. I used to tutor English as a second language immigrants to the province of Nova Scotia. I did that when I was in law school. And he sent me a link that they were looking for tutors for that specific thing at the public library downtown. And I actually ended up doing that, and it was amazing. I did that right up until COVID hit, and loved it. But he also encouraged me to get back into some art stuff, which is definitely, for me, the artistic, like creativity for me is the artistic side a lot of the time. And totally supported me in this crazy venture. There's a point to my story here where I decided I wanted to become a felter. So I needed to, Sarah is having a hard time not laughing out loud here. It's okay, you can laugh. It's kind of funny.
I have nothing against felters. I just can't imagine you being a felter.
Okay, well, just FYI, I actually am a felter.
Are you?
I have an entire cabinet full of felting stuff. So I went on this like felting bonanza where I had figured out where to source all of the stuff I needed. And I didn't want to just be like a regular felter. I wanted to learn how to like wet felt and make my own like felting backgrounds. And I don't know. It's like, anyway, guess what? The only thing I finished was a felted lobster. And I love it.
Sorry.
I love it.
Can you please put a picture of that on the video?
Maybe at some point I will show everybody my felted lobster, but I made a felted lobster, like it's not a stuffed, like a 3-dimensional lobster, but like a picture of a lobster. And it's actually it's pretty good. It looks like a lobster, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And I did it, I created the template.
That's awesome.
Cut it out and did it and whatever. And it took a lot of time because felting is not as easy as it looks, people. And, so I did that and maybe like a couple other little things, but that was really the one project that I finished. And I had a lot of guilt about the fact that the felting stuff got put back away in the cupboard, and I haven't really been back to it since. But what I kind of coached myself through this whole thing. And, the value in that for me was in the lost time of doing the lobster. Yeah. And just like with everything else in life, we get so hard on ourselves about the fact that we aren't consistent with something, that it actually leads to us never doing it again. you know, and instead what I'm trying to do with the felting, because I was actually cleaning the cupboards the other day and I found all this stuff, which is why it's fresh in my mind, is remind myself of the fact that I can do that in small, I can just do it in little bits. I don't need to felt like, you know, a mural, but just felting little things, felt a Christmas ornament, felt a whatever, you know, and you can put it away and leave it for a long time. And if you don't complete it, that's okay too. It's not about the end product. It's about the process and the time and enjoying the time that you're spending doing it.
Yep.
Right?
Every year I knit one sock.
Oh, perfect.
Every year, one sock.
They don't have partners?
No, because I don't want to knit with the same wool the next year because I don't like it anymore because that's not my aesthetic this year.
Oh my
So
God. Maybe we should start selling like lobster in a sock.
Yeah. So, you know, it's the process. It's the process of knitting the sock.
Right.
And, you know, and also I had to give up. I just thought of this when you were talking about not completing things. As I said, so for me, reading books it stimulates my imagination. It's a creative process for me. And I really would love to be an author of novels. I don't know that I ever will be, but I would love to be. So I live in a bit of that fantasy sometimes. But I had to actually give myself permission to not finish a book I wasn't enjoying. And that is surprisingly common.
Yeah.
That people will finish a book. They just plod through it, even though it's not really engaging them. And that I think is also the same as, I think it's the same thing, which is basically like, I don't actually have to win. I don't have to end this. I don't have to, you know, it's not a sense that the sense of satisfaction actually is better when I put it down and I say, I actually making a choice not to read this book because it's really not engaging to me. As opposed to that, like I slogged through this book and now I'm done and I can check it off my list, right? Because then it's not creative anymore. So it's not feeding that energy.
No, that's just jacking your.
It's a job.
It is jacking your cortisol. You were reading that book and you're like, I don't want to be reading this book. There are a million other things I would like to be doing, but I'm just going to read this book. And I think the same thing goes. It's interesting you bring that up because I just had this experience this morning. I can't remember who it was, but I was like flipping through. I posted something on Instagram for work and I was flipping through my feed and started listening to this person who I generally kind of like and has interesting things to say. And I actually said out loud, I don't have time for you right now. And I was like, I know who it was, but I'm not going to say it out loud. But it was kind of a semi-celebrity. And I was like, yeah, I don't think so, X. And I just kept going because I think this might be connected to my Menoversary and this whole grounding thing. I just don't care anymore. And I'm not going to waste my time on stuff that doesn't serve me. I'm just not. Yeah. And I'm doing better at, I'm more discerning. And I'm also better, I think, at letting myself off the hook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and that comes back to the hardest part of engaging in creativity around perimenopause for women. There's two parts. One is the finding out what it is, unless you already know.
Right.
And the second is giving yourself the permission to do it and to know that it has an extraordinary amount of value.
Yeah.
More than you'll ever know. You cannot quantify it, right? You can qualify it, but you can't quantify it. There's no way to measure it. It's just, it improves your well-being.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good, I think, way to end this episode. I'm actually quite delighted that we had so much to say about this topic because when we came into it, I knew you'd have lots to say, but I really didn't know what I would have to say about this, but apparently more than I thought. So, as usual. Okay, well, before we end, I would like to do a shameless plug for our program that's coming up, which we cannot give you any details on yet. And I don't know when this particular episode is going to air. So by the time this airs, we may have way more information about this. And in fact, it may even be, the program may be opening. But what I would like to say is this: we have gotten lots of feedback from people who are interested in this, mystery program that Sarah and I are putting together. And as a result of that, what we've done is we've started a wait list just by putting yourself on the wait list does not mean you're in any way committed to doing the program. But what it does do is it's going to give you early access to the details about the program and an opportunity to register. And chances are, although again, we haven't quite determined this yet, chances are that numbers will be limited for at least the pilot version of this project. So the first program that launches will probably have limited numbers in it. So it is a good idea to get yourself on the list if it's something you think would be of interest to you. Which it would be, by the way, because you're listening to this episode and you made it all the way to the end. So if you like listening to Sarah and I banter and, explore the world of female hormones together and the meaning of midlife, maybe that's what we should call the program, the meaning of midlife.
Right. Oh, that's pretty good.
Good. There's that creativity thing happening. Yeah. If you're interested, then I would suggest you get yourself on the wait list, and you just have to go to wendymccallum.com/list. So that's wendymccallum.com/list, and just sign up there. And that'll put you on a list. You won't hear from us probably right away. Although again, depending on when this podcast airs, we may have more to tell you at that point, significantly more. But pop yourself on that list, and then we'll get all the details to you, and you can make a decision as to whether it's a good fit for you or not. What we can tell you, just to give a little bit of what we're thinking of right now, anyway, it's May 7th, so when we're recording this, what we're thinking of is a combination of a course where there actually are some videos that Sarah and I do either on our own or together. We're not sure what the format is, but where we talk about the big topics that we love to talk about: women's burnout, midlife, and hormones, and how all of those things kind of mesh together. So we'll have a course aspect to it that you can access and watch on your own time, but there will also be a group aspect. So we're really committed to doing some kind of an interactive group program here where Sarah and I are in it, and you guys get to work with both of us. And again, the format of that will be online, but the exact format of that is yet to be decided. But we will be doing group coaching and teaching, and we will create a community, which we are really committed to. We really want to have a community of like-minded women. And we just want to get this conversation going. And we want to include you in that conversation. So don't know the length of the program, don't know the price of the program, don't know anything except that it will be a format that will allow us to have a really interactive group, which means we won't have 1,000 people in this program. It will be a smaller program. So details to come on that. We're really excited about it. Again, if you want to hop on the wait list, it's just wendymccallum.com/list. We would love to see you there. Anything else, Sarah?
No, I think that's good for today.
Great. Well, it was awesome chatting with you as always. Hope everybody enjoyed this episode. Oh, wait, Sarah's putting her hand up. Something else to say.
I would love to hear people's feedback about their experience of the burgeoning creativity, or the feeling of wanting to be creative, or are surprised that they took up a creative pursuit, and now they can see the link between their time in life and the movement towards creativity. I would love to hear some of that feedback, because I find it endlessly fascinating.
Send it to me, and I will make sure that Sarah gets the feedback, because I think too, Sarah, will probably be helpful to you to just continue collecting data for the book that you're writing as well, right? Which is
I also think that it's there may be more to have about this conversation. This is the first time I've ever talked about it with anybody other than you and my husband. So I think that in terms of the course, and I'd just be interested to know what women's experiences are if they feel like sharing.
Okay. Well, so share those with me. You can always get me at wendy@wendymccallum.com or through any of my social media channels, and we would love to hear from you. And one last thing before we go, we're also happy to answer your questions. We did a listener question and answer thing episode, which will have aired by the time this one airs. And we are happy to do another one of those. We love those. So if you have questions that you would like Sarah or I to answer around the meaning of midlife, just send those our way, and we will we'll collect them up till we have enough to do an individual episode on that. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
All right. Bye.
You've been listening to Bite Size Balance with your host, Wendy McCallum. As a burnout and balance coach, I help busy high achievers like you create a more balanced, joyful life. If you've been putting yourself last for way too long and are worried that you're burning out, grab your free burnout checklist at www.wendymccallum.com/checklist. That's www.wendymccallum.com/checklist.